Yeah, okay. So good evening, everyone. I am PK Sidharth Ramkumar. So I got All India rank 4 this time around, and I was previously. So I'm currently under training in Indian Police Service at National Police Academy, Hyderabad. I graduated in 2019 from Kerala University in architecture, and after that I got into Indian Post and Telecom Accounts and Finance Service in 2020 CSE. In 21 CSE I got into Indian Police Service, West Bengal cadre, and 22 CSE rank 121, so didn't change. This time around rank 4. So we'll start with, so today we'll try to have a little idea about GS2 and GS3 for mains. So we'll look at some PYQ, previous year questions. We'll look at some of like some approaches, how we can approach the GS2 paper, specifically in each part, like each subject out of GS2 and GS3, very briefly. So GS2 basically we have polity in constitution. So constitution, we have governance, we have international relations, we have social justice. There are only 4, no? So we have 4 parts essentially. So we look into each part separately a little. Like how do we start? How do we approach each part separately? So we'll start with constitution and polity. So this is like a general structure that I try to use for GS2, especially polity questions. So if we look at the previous year questions, we'll find we have at least 25 to 30% or a little more from polity and constitution. And then we'll have 3 to 4 questions out of 20 from international relations. We'll have some questions from social justice and some from governance. So mostly a lot of the questions, nearly I think 8 questions roughly, we'll have 5 to 10 questions from polity and constitution, which makes it extremely important. So how do we, what are the general questions that are asked in GS2 from polity and governance, and what are the general approaches that we can use for the same? So the general questions, we either have direct questions like in terms of fundamental rights, in terms of Article 21, in terms of Article 14, equality, in terms of right to life, in terms of environmental laws, in terms of case laws of Supreme Court with respect to even privacy or other questions. We can briefly look at 22 paper. So 22 paper we have, so one question is, the most significant achievement of modern law in India is the constitutionalization of environmental problems by the Supreme Court. So basically it is environmental case laws. We have very famous laws like the MC Mehta case, Godavarman Thirumalpad case and all that. So we'll look into all that a little. So that is basically again the static part of constitution, static part of whichever books we are referring. We have Article 21. So this is basically again part of Article 21 because right to environment is again part of Article 21. Then we have right of movement and residence. So this is again fundamental right, related to fundamental right. This is right of movement and residence throughout the territory of India are freely available to the Indian citizens, but these rights are not absolute. Again, part of fundamental rights, Article 19, we have Article 19.2, we have 25.2. So all the fundamental rights have riders, they are not absolute. We have checks and balances, we have conditions wherein it might be restricted to a certain extent. So again, this is related to rights, it's related to polity. To what extent? We look at another question. To what extent, in your opinion, has the decentralization of power changed the governance landscape at the grassroots? So decentralization of power, again, it is related to local self-government. We have a separate part in GS2 separately written as local self-government. So again, direct question. So the point of looking at the previous year questions is to establish again that we either get questions directly from the syllabus or we get questions from the static part, I mean again that is syllabus, or from previous year questions, like questions repeat. A lot of the questions are either repeat or they carry forward some parts from the previous questions, or they are from the current. but especially for polity and constitution part of the paper, we have questions mostly from static part. So if we are strong in the static part, and if we know, if we have prepared for the parts specifically mentioned in the syllabus, the questions will be mostly from them. Another question is the role of Vice President of India as the Chairman of Rajya Sabha. Very direct question. Again, part of the static, but it was specifically asked possibly because it was in the current, current affairs that year. Role of National Commission for Backward Classes. I think it was repeated. Like National Commission question about 1 or 2 National Commissions were asked. For women was also asked. National Commission for Backward classes were also asked. So this is again static part. Again, it was in news. It was in current affairs. It is part of the Lakshmikant. It is part of the static books which we read. It's part of everything that is part of the syllabus. So it's again a direct question. Another question: Gati Shakti Yojana needs meticulous coordination between government and private sector to achieve the goal of connectivity. Now this is a little different. It's part of governance. It's part of how governance is changing from like the yesteryear planning models to Pragati, to PFMS, to decentralization, and at the same time centralized planning and decentralized implementation. So we have a lot of management information system software is being used. We have a lot of systems in place wherein the tracking happens. Like even if it is Aadhaar, even if it is a scheme dispersal of any fund, anything that has happened, that is happening, a lot of monitoring is happening. And here a lot of coordination is also happening. Basically, Gati Shakti is basically trying to talk about how coordination between the different ministries are happening. So that's also related to governance, but this is one question out of the 6 that we have seen, which has come from a little bit from current affairs of the last few years. But again, directly related to syllabus. Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016 remains only a legal document without intense sensitization of government functionaries and citizens regarding disability comment. Again, it is specifically mentioned in the syllabus related to social justice, welfare programs for different sections of the society who are vulnerable. So we have, if we look at the different sections who are vulnerable, be it women, be it scheduled tribes, be it disabled, differently able people, be it elderly people. So for each part, we have to have a separate note. We have to have a separate 2-page note. We have to have a separate note on the status, present status. What are the steps taken by the government at present, and what are the steps needed in the future. So we'll discuss about that a little more. So again, this is again direct. Although it was asked in 2022, we know that this is part of like the Persons with Disabilities Act 2016 is old. It is part of the vulnerable section, so we should be having a little note. And then whatever note we have, if we have had a little content about the status, what are the steps taken and what are the issues at present, we would be able to answer that decently. Another question from governance: reforming government delivery system through DBT is a progressive step, but it has limitations too. So basically, point being, polity and governance, we'll club it a little together. Polity and governance, it is either directly from the syllabus, like whichever part is specifically mentioned in the syllabus, or it is from current affairs of that 1 or 2 years which were in news, or it is from previous year questions. But mostly it is not even current affairs, it is mostly from the static part. So polity and constitution part, how can we make it a little, like how do we add value addition, how do we structure the answer in general. So in general, we have the introduction, we have the body, okay, so we have the introduction, we have the body, and we have the conclusion. So how do we start an introduction for polity? Like we can start it in multiple ways, but just to give a basic idea about how it can also be done. Like polity in general, you can start with an article, you can start with a recent case, you can even start with a judgment. Like if a question on even people with disabilities is asked, if you know a particular court case, you can start with a court case, you can set the tone, you can set the background, you can set the context of the case, or even the article that it is part of this thing, or a law, like something specific, some factual content. You can start this thing with a factual content. Then you move on to the body, like it's either 10 marker questions or it is 15 marker questions. So 10 marker, roughly 10 points. You support the thing, you talk about the steps taken you talk about the issues, concerns that are there, and then you talk about what are the steps needed again going further. So in that body, and then okay, then we have the conclusion. So how do we conclude? Again, it's not like generally don't conclude with a thus it is important, thus, like you can do it if you have no time, you are like don't have a time, or you're not able to think at the moment. Otherwise, try to have either you have prepared conclusions or you have prepared structures, areas to go to for dimensions for conclusions. Like if it is conclusion, you can either quote an expert, or you can even quote a court case again, like in introduction, or you can quote a committee, like going forward, what more needs to be done. Like if the question doesn't specifically ask about what more needs to be done, you can end with way forward, as noted by Sumit Bose committee for rural development, going forward we need to do ABC, or going forward as noted by Iyer committee for local self-government, we need to do activity mapping of this. We have to have solutions of committees or experts. Okay, and in the body, how do you add value addition? So in the body, in GS2 constitution and polity and governance in particular, it's important to have a lot of case laws prepared. So case laws are the most fundamental thing, like in terms of value addition, even in terms of points. Like if we are looking at points for questions like local self-government, or questions like tribal development, or any particular case related to polity, related to rights, related to articles and fundamental rights and all that, the points, the arguments are generally from the constitution, like article 14 says, article 19, article 21, but we also need case laws, that is court cases, to substantiate and to give some value addition to the content. So most of the value addition that you should be ideally doing for mains in terms of polity should be collecting case laws in terms of all the areas that have been asked in PYQ, all the areas that are mostly relevant in the syllabus. Like syllabus has specifically spoken about rights, DPSP. Like you prepare on the DPSP for prelims from a different perspective. Like you don't specifically need different court cases, because you only have to know what DPSP, which article says what. But for mains, it is better that if you have some value addition in terms of different case laws. Like as we saw, there's a question on environmental laws. So we have to have, like we can connect it to article 21, it is part of right to life. But then we need to have 5 to 10 points. So how do we generate those points? We can only have limited points, limited general points if we think on the moment with general points. We have to have more case laws prepared. Again, it was in news, so we have to, so everything that we are preparing revolves around 3 things. It revolves around the triad of syllabus, current affairs, and previous year questions. So where do you prepare case laws from? You prepare case laws from areas which have been asked in the last 10 years, like which are the areas that have been repeating, like rights. In terms of rights also, it is mostly fundamental rights. It's either article 14, 19, 21. So you can analyze the PYQ, you can find out which are the areas that are repeating. And for each of that, each of the PYQ from the last 10 years, you should have at least 5 to 10 court cases which you can quote. It can be mixed, like some cases wherein you can have the same case, like Maneka Gandhi case, or you can have many cases like even Keshavananda Bharati case. Some cases can be quoted in multiple areas, but for every question in the PYQ, ideally you should have 5 to 10 cases in your notes for PYQ. And then again, this similarly applies for the syllabus content, like syllabus subparts that are mentioned in the syllabus. Ideally, you should be having 5 to 10 good case laws for each of the separate parts, like local self-government also, if you have some content in terms of case laws. If you don't find case laws, it's okay. Some areas you will not find, but wherever possible, wherever you can just Google it, you can use Copilot, you can use Legal Service India, whichever site is relevant, you can search and find content, but find 5 to 10 good cases. And when you're finding cases, you just need one line. What is the crux of the case? Like if it is MC Mehta case versus Union of India, it is just that our right to fair environment or a good environment is part of right to life, article 21. That is the essence, that is the crux. What is Olga Tellis case? Livelihood, like right to livelihood is part of right to life, article 21. Just the crux of the case is enough, but you need multiple cases depending on the parts. So you need case laws to embellish a little more. You can quote judges, you can quote experts. If you are following at least newspaper between prelims and mains, you will find a lot of comments. Like case laws are mostly about what was specifically told, like the essence of the case law, essence of the judgment. but you will also have a lot of obiter dictum. You will also have a lot of like views like said by judges, by experts. Like when you are reading the headlines, you will see that the Chief Justice, Honorable Chief Justice noted something, or some particular judge of some high court noted something, or even some expert, former justice, former this thing, or experts like Upendra Bakshi, or like any expert quoting something relevant to something that was in news for a very long time. So if you think that will be asked, you can use it somewhere, like some quote about basic structure, some quote about in general how things are moving, something like that. You can keep it, you can use it in conclusion, you can use it in some point trying to substantiate it. So court case, then judge's opinion, then commissions. Like commissions are extremely important. Again, like some of the basic commissions committees, like second ARC, Administrative Reforms Commission, you have Sarkaria and all the similar center-state relation committees. You have to have a little more committees in terms of local self-government, like IR committee. It is not necessarily, like it's not mandatory that you need that, but the thing is, like, it is a competitive exam. So end of the day, if you have better content in terms of value addition, your notes, your answers will be better. So try to have a little more committee, commission recommendations in terms of every area that is there in the syllabus. Like current, for every area in current committee might not be there, but every area in syllabus, let's say GS2, local self-government, you have center-state relations, you have minorities. Like for minorities, you have this committee, such a committee, you have other committees. For everywhere, major areas, you will have some relevant committees. Don't just quote the committee, have 2 to 3 solid recommendations of the committee. Like this committee noted that this is the thing. Like you can make the note in like 1 or 2 lines, like 1 this, 2 this, just the crux of the committee recommendations. So that you can quote it in either the body to substantiate various points, or you can quote it in the conclusion. Like you are saying an argument, you're quoting an argument. In bracket, you can say as noted by this committee, or you can say in conclusion, going forward as noted by this committee, we have to do A, B, C, etc. So court cases, case laws are important, judges' opinions are extremely important, like case laws are most important, then committee recommendations are important, then opinions of experts, judges, it gives a little bit of flavor, then current important, like how do you connect the current events. So even if you are not reading the newspapers from like front to end in detail, if you are like if you are aware of the developments, like what are the headlines, what are the areas, and where do they connect to in terms of the syllabus. Like let's say article, let's say something in GS2, let's say local self-government, something in news comes, something like there is E-Gram Swaraj in the compilation, or in the newspaper you see something about E-Gram Swaraj. That is also MIS, Management Information System software, which tracks the governance system structure for local self-governments, where the government can track the allocations, it can track the different things that are done. So that you can connect. Like you just need to have examples or relevant things which you can connect. Like let's say some case, some controversial thing happens related to media freedom, which you can connect to Article 19, you can connect to Article 21, you can connect it to different articles. So you quote the case, like there was some Vinod Dua case. Like when I was preparing, like in those years, like last 2-3 years, there were some famous cases. So you just need the crux of the case, the name of the thing, connecting it to which area of the syllabus, which area of news in question. Then this is a little extra because the syllabus specifically asks about Constitutional Assembly debates. If you can, for the different syllabus areas, if you can have one person supporting, like one expert who was there in the Constitutional Assembly having a particular view, and another expert having an alternative view. So because it will give some more depth into your answer. Like you can like quickly search, if you find, just take it, if you don't find it, it's okay. Like in the Constitutional Assembly debates, if we take the example of basic structure, there were some experts, like I don't remember the name exactly, it is there in the notes. So there were some experts who like supported the basic structure, like not specifically, like how they said that judicial independence is important, or judicial review, they spoke about judicial review and all that. And there were some experts who were wary about the balances in terms of the different organs. So you can use that for basic structure, you can use that for different areas. So if you have some constitutional debates in terms of people supporting a particular area and people going against the particular argument, then you can collect it. In terms of the syllabus, like you divide the notes or your content in terms of syllabus areas, like secularism, or if it is GS2 local self-government, in terms of basic structure, in terms of the different syllabus areas. Then if you find all this, take note of those. Then like in terms of the basic, like this is whatever you've already studied for prelims, like the articles, the schedules, amendments, case laws included. So just again, like whenever you're making note, like connect all the articles that are related to that, like basic structure, everything 1921, everything is part of basic structure. So you can just note which all are connected to that particular area. Local self-government, which area? Article 40, Gram Swaraj. Like which all articles, which all amendments, which all parts or schedules are related. So that whenever you are noting, like whenever you're just writing a very simple argument, you can try to substantiate it. You can give a little more of depth or value into that answer. Then another thing again which you can use possibly is indices. Like for every area, if you can get an index like government index, Niti Aayog, SDG index, or if it is something related to governance, you have this index. So if you, the importance or the use of getting indices is, the indices will give you different dimensions. Like it will tell you in terms of, like it will be having 3 to 4 dimensions, and those dimensions can be used as subheadings. Like when you are analyzing, when you are supporting, or when you are refuting, when you are analyzing a particular area, the index itself gives you a lot of content. Like let's take the ease of doing business. Like that itself gives you 10 points, 10 dimensions to look at in terms of a question, if a question comes from that perspective. So that can also be looked into. Okay, now so indices, like we have various indexes, global green growth or something, like you have world press freedom index, passport index, like all these indices give you a certain dimensions, or they can be used as introductions or conclusions. Like introductions better, it sets the context where India is, or suddenly you can say that this index noted that India is, this thing is alarming or good or improving, and then you can start. Okay, now talking about the committees. So these are like few committees for GS2. Like we have Sachar committee, we have Ranganath Mishra committee for minorities, linguistic and religious minorities. We have Vora committee, Nexus, conflict of this thing, Dinesh Goswami. Like election, we have Dinesh Goswami committee, Tarkunde committee. We have Indrajit Gupta committee. So all of this. So one page you can have for just the committees, and if you can like take 3 points, like here it is just about what are the committees related to. You should be having note about like 3 recommendations, solid recommendations in 1 line or 2 lines. Like Debar committee, PVTG, like Verma committee on Vishaka guidelines, Malimat committee, Mullah committee on prisons, Prakash Singh judgment, like main points. You can use them in multiple areas, like internal migration, Partha Mukhopadhyay, Vijay Kumar committee on NGOs. Like these are all mostly compiled by toppers. You can Google it, you can take PIB content. If you take government committee on this thing, if you search, you will get content. It is not extremely important, but it gives you a lot of new recommendations which are like good solutions. Like whenever we are writing an answer, the only way we can be safe in terms of value addition, in terms of the structure of the answer, is if our content is a little more good in terms of depth. Like everyone comes up with very random general points. Even if I am asked to write an answer suddenly about any particular question, it will be a very general answer. It will be very general points, very general answer. But if we have prepared committee recommendations, prepared dimensions, prepared structures, then it will be a lot more easier. Like whichever question, even if the question is only asking about problems, we have solutions in hand. So the answer, the question looks very holistic. So prepare a little bit on recommendations. So that is mostly about, okay, and then in terms of value addition, again, another thing is like you have to, if possible, for every area, try to build content in terms of stats, quotes, recommendations. Mostly we have covered all that, laws, examples and diagrams. So statistics, again, for every area, local self-government, what is the status? You search either year-end review of Ministry of Panchayati Raj, or any PIB article, or any analysis article, or any Hindu or Express article, you will get statistics. Just collect them into your 2-page note for that area. So collect statistics, collect quotes, collect recommendations. Recommendations are same as committee recommendations, including Niti Aayog or second ARC or any committee. Then collect examples. Like whenever you are reading for the next 3 months between prelims and mains, like everything, like every content related to every area in the syllabus, you will have something related to it, some event happening. So just take a very small note of the event example, and then you can have interesting diagrams also, like prepare it beforehand. So this is like a 20-page, I think, content of my diagrams only. So the point is the presentation improves drastically if we have better diagrams. So this is mostly about GS2 polity part. So very general diagrams, but you can use it in multiple areas. Thoda aur. Okay. Some, like, depending on the question. So this is Article 21 Puttaswamy judgment. So this is necessity, proportionality, legality. So test of necessity, test of proportionality, test of legality. So let's take a question, you want to analyze it. So Puttaswamy judgment gives you a framework to analyze it, like whether from the test of proportionality, whether that step is needed, not needed. From the test of necessity, whether it is needed, whether is there a better alternative. Whether from the test of legality, it is ethical but not legal, or not legal at present, something like that. So then diagrams like balancing, like they talk about harmonious construction of different articles of fundamental rights in DPSP. Similarly, you can talk about harmonious construction of different articles. Like you can innovate a little, like harmoniously constructing 14, 19, 21 triad. Like these are like very basic things. Depending on the question, you can tweak a little. So this is like due process, due diligence, and fair judgment. So like these are like very basic diagrams which can be tweaked according to the question. So this is like local self-government. What is the structure of decision making? Like it starts from Panchayati Raj institutions. It goes to district planning committee. You would have read about it. And then from there, so at least in Kerala it happens in this way. From PRI it goes to DPC, district planning committee. From there it goes to state planning board. State planning board, from there it could possibly go to Niti Aayog. So that is like we are trying to say how decision making happens. And then if you want, you can add a little bit of facts which you have collected into the diagram. So the presentation improves, like this is the allocation to the ministry, or like the status content you have collected or something, you can add to the diagram. Then again you have education, like this is most of my diagrams related to education, GS2. So education, health, all that. We'll talk about it specifically again, but just while discussing diagrams, like diagrams again gives you a lot of analysis. Like if you have diagrams prepared in terms of comparison, like how different states compare, like in terms of literacy, you can have a small map of India where any particular southern state, any particular northern state, any particular western, eastern state, like 3-4 this thing, you can suddenly quickly draw a diagram of Indian map in like 10 seconds with the numbers. So that will suddenly give the status in terms of comparison, how there's a regional disparity, how different areas have like how they compare in terms of themselves, like that for education, for health, for hunger, for different areas wherever possible. And then that kind of comparison can also be between India and another country. Like let's say the expenditure, like percentage of GDP spent on education by India, by US, or India, China, or India vis-a-vis OECD countries. Like that kind of comparison gives a lot of depth to the answer, and the presentation improves. And whenever you are collecting notes, you can sometimes convert your extra notes into diagrams. So this is like self-help groups. So there was Panchatantra or something about self-help groups. It was given by some committee. Like what is needed? Like every self-help group should have regular meetings, regular savings, regular loaning. So this is Usha Thorat committee. Regular bookkeeping and regular audit. And then we can add the analysis in the diagram in terms of where it is lacking. Like regular, like this is improved, but this is not improved. So basically, if you have prepared dimensions, prepared diagrams, it helps in the presentation and it gives a little more depth. Like let's take this example. Like all of us would have prepared about Amul Cooperative, but then if we connect it to Anand Agri Institute, Seva SHG for labor, connected to Amul Cooperative, which is connected to Amul Chocolate Factory, which is like food processing institute, then connected to Mundra Port. We are showing the whole supply chain. Like here, it can be connected to, like whenever we are quoting a case study, we can add it into a diagram. Like if we have 3 to 4 examples, we can connect it everything into a integrated example, integrated case study. So this was how I was talking about comparing different areas in India. Similarly, even ideas of experts, like there's a famous social choice theory of Amartya Sen. So that talks about how democracy increased democracy increases the freedoms, increased freedom increases the choices, how increased choices lead to increased capabilities, and how increased capabilities lead to increased justice or justice. So even that can be added in terms of analysis, in terms of this thing. So I'm saying, like, it is not needed to exactly use anything from this, but you can try to generate your own diagrams wherever you have extra content and then compile it for last minute revision. So now we'll look at IAR a little. Okay, India is an age-old friend of Sri Lanka. Discuss India's role in the recent crisis in Sri Lanka in the light of the preceding statement. So again, basically it is India, Sri Lanka. So IR is relatively easier to prepare. International relations, the thing is like you prepare about, it's mostly entirely from current affairs. So whichever areas, whichever countries India, like the Honorable PM has visited, or wherever there was a lot of discussion in the columns, in the editorials, then we prepare good content for those. And then about the main areas, like I think the three main focus areas of India's foreign policy is like neighborhood, and then we have increasing our footprint in the major areas, like be it Africa, be it Southeast Asia, and thirdly the big powers. So these are three axes where we are trying to focus our diplomacy. So when you are preparing also, like neighborhood, 1 or 2 questions on neighborhood is like very likely, because it is always important from a strategic perspective. So you will have to have good content for every neighbor, like at least 1-page note on what are the steps taken, what are the issues, what are the new things that are happening, any expert opinion, any specifics related to that. And then you have to have some good content about India's relations with big powers like USA, Russia, China, and the big blocs as well, be it Southeast Asia, ASEAN, be it Africa, all the other areas. Then whatever area is in news in that particular year, like if India-France relations has peaked, or India has visited France, or India-Australia, some ACTA, some agreement or something is happening, then that country becomes more important from the mains perspective. So this is like neighborhood, India, Sri Lanka, it's like static. It should be considered as static because it is there in the syllabus, India's relations with neighbors. We should be having a note. Then BIMSTEC. So again, then it's about other different groupings and agreements. Again, part of the syllabus. Like groupings and agreements, just look into all, first take a list of all the groupings India is part of, like 1 page, write wherever India is a part of, which all agreements India is a part of, mostly like the famous ones, and then the groupings India is part of, be it SAARC, be it BIMSTEC, be it everything. Then after creating a 1-page note on all that, then try to look which is in news more. Like if you look at the compilation, or if you look at the last 1 year news, which all areas have been in news more. Maybe a BRICS meeting, maybe SCO, something was controversial, maybe even some things, some bodies or agreements which were in news where India is not directly a member, but something which can have some repercussions for India's foreign policy, like NATO, like NATO going somewhere, NATO doing something, NATO expanding to somewhere, like some member entering NATO, some members exiting NATO, something like that. So something about NATO can be asked. So prepare on that if it is there in news in that particular year. Again, IMF, World Bank, everything, very important, because they are always part of the static thing. So you don't have to have a lot of notes, but have a half-page note, 1 para, like what are the issues in that, what are the recommendations that India want, or what are the things that India want from there, like be it resolving it or expanding it, whatever. Then sometimes this is from the current, like clean energy is the order of the day. Describe briefly India's changing climate policy. So in the international fora, again, like it is not part of GS3, it was asked in GS2. So sometimes IR questions can be from, like it can be correlated. Like even questions from GS3, seemingly from GS3 environment, where something like IPCC or something, some meeting happened, something happened. that can also be asked in terms of how it affects India's foreign policy or India's decisions. So again, you just have to prepare notes on wherever India is part of, which all agreements, which all this thing India is part of, which all other bodies and agreements in use, even if India is not a member in that particular year, and wherever possible in the PYQ, which all areas have been asked. So it's either current, it's either static, or it's in the PYQ. So I2, U2 that year was very much in news. Israel, India, UAE and USA. Again, it is directly from current. If you have some 5 to 10 good points, you can deal the question easily. So now we look at the notes a little. So IR notes, basically we don't talk about the notes again. IR notes, mostly it is current. Beyond the 2-page notes that you prepare for let's say each different neighbor, beyond that everything is current, because everything that is asked in IR is generally from international from the current affairs. So this was my current affairs IR note. It was from the different compilations only and a little bit of my own. So here again I just try to add the value addition part, like whichever areas, things which I'll forget. So this is related to bilateral, regional, global groupings, India, USA. So this includes some statistics like setting, like what is the India-US trade at present, and then I can compare like how India, China or US, China is a little more, like not needed, but if you can remember little in some areas, it is helpful. Like what are the things like India, like in terms of military agreements or military associations, whatever, PASEX, Malabar, Nisar, space. So what all are the, like when you're preparing note for each big nation, big power, each major neighbor that we are having a close relationship with or not, and then each major thing that is in use. So everywhere, like have some notes in terms of some statistics, like the trade if possible, especially for major countries. Then have some content in terms of like cultural, that is soft power, what all this thing. Then in terms of hard power again divided into military power and economic power. Like economic, again you can divide in terms of connectivity, in terms of trade, in terms of particular industry. And then diaspora. So any international relation question, you have 5 dimensions already. One is soft power. Again, soft power you can divide it in terms of different parts of soft power, with different types of soft power. Then diaspora, again part of soft power. Then you have a hard power, military one, and economy. And economy, again you can divide into different areas if you have content. So you at least have 5 areas, 5 dimensions to hit. Then so these are 5 dimensions to it, and in that also you have to look at how there is convergence, like where all we are converging and where all there is some tension. Like any relation, any country, be it India, US, where we have very good relations, even there will be some points of friction, like some areas where we have some confusion or some unresolved issues. So even that you should have some content. And then this is just the value addition part, like what all things I can forget. So India, US, India, UK, EU, India, France, India, Russia. And the point of making notes is that it should be very short. So the IR notes or the GS IR notes can be as short as like 5 pages, 6 pages, 10 pages, so that you can even revise it between GS1 and GS2, like when you get to us. Central Asia, Middle East. And here also for every area have some content, but then have more content if it is relevant or if it has come frequently in the news. Like if Central Asia has not been in news very much, then your content on Central Asia should be like enough to write a 250 answer even if it comes, but you don't have to have too much of content. But if some area has been like India, Middle East, if it is in news too much, like have a little more value addition. Like if you, value addition can be from newspaper, any explained article, FAQ article, it can be from any think tank, like you have the Observer, ORF, something you can read, you can get some content, any Indian Express or Hindu column or everything, like you can have some value addition. So that is about international relations. So it is basically, again, like you just have to have content for neighborhood, big powers, then you have to have content for agreements and associations, bodies where India is part or which can affect India. And so again, international relations is entirely, mostly entirely current affairs. So even if you just read the compilation, have some basic content, that should also help. But follow the current affairs, like read the newspaper wherever possible. The thing about reading news is that it will give you an idea about which was more important. Like Modi, like Honorable Prime Minister visiting any particular area, any particular country in that 3 months will give us an idea why it is like more important. Can it be asked? Or let's say India and Australia signed an FTA, or India and UAE signed an FTA. So if that is in news, if it is in explained, if it is in FAQ a little more, if it has come for 3-4 days in repetition, then it gives an idea that okay, it has been discussed for a week, it has a lot of repercussions, it has a lot of consequence for India's development. So in that way, you should have 1-page proper note for that. So that is about IR. Now we have governance. Governance and social justice. Okay. So again, governance, social justice, vulnerable, all that. Again, the structure is same. We have an introduction, we have a body, we have a conclusion. In the introduction, we can start with something, some fact, some context, some news event, why it was in news, why it is relevant, some article, something like that. Or you can even define, or some report, something like that. Then in the body, you have to have either, if it is a 10 marker, you divide it into suitable subheadings based on your notes, based on how, like if it is local self-government in terms of functions, functionaries, like you can make structures and then have notes in terms of that. And also sometimes the question itself will ask, like what are the advantages, what are the hits, what are the misses. So in terms of that, you can prepare notes, like you can prepare the answer and the notes accordingly. And you should also have some value addition. So I have made it a small mnemonic like SQRLED, stat, quote, report, law, example and diagram. Every major area when you are making notes have statistics, have quotations. It can, in GS2, quotation can even be case laws. It can be case laws, it can be quotation of an expert, a judge or an expert. And then have reports. Reports can be, as I said, Niti Aayog reports or ARC, second ARC, or committee recommendations. You can have laws, like for every vulnerable section or every area, you'll have a particular law, you'll have a particular article. So you should have some content about the article and the law as well. Then examples from the newspaper, or which all are famous, very famous examples. And then have some diagrams and for improving the presentation. These are like some very general diagrams which can be used in almost every area. Like one leading to another, a circular, like virtuous cycle, vicious cycle, or depending on the question. Okay. So intros, again in social justice and governance as well. It can be either from the constitution, like even for social justice, it can be using the constitution, even for governance as well. Or it can be definition, it can be an index, it can be news, background, recommendation, report, something. Okay, body, as I said, like paths, for, against, way forward. For, against, way forward. Also before way forward, you can talk about steps taken already, like what all steps government has already taken, and going forward, what more is needed. Then if it is 10 marker, roughly 2 subheadings, 15 marker, roughly 3 subheadings. Conclusions also you can prepare, like along which lines you can. As I said, it can be committee recommendations. That is the most solid one because it has solutions. You can also quote some SDG, like generally people quote SDG, to achieve that SDG, we should be doing this. Or DPSP, like it is a constitutional goal. So one is a global goal, one is a constitutional goal. And then some famous quotations by the government of India, like Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, or New India at 75, being developed at 2047. These are like goals of India. We are trying to say, if we do these, we will be able to achieve India's goal of being developed by 2047. Or alternatively, you can have some quotation, committee recommendation, etc. Okay, so governance. Governance is like we'll get 2, 3 or max 4 questions. In general, it is mostly about our understanding about the different schemes, how the government works, or if any major change has happened in terms of how government disbursal or government planning has changed. Like Gati Shakti is important because the government planning, like how the different ministries are coordinating, that made a major change. Or something like the Pragati or PFMS is important because how the disbursal happens or how monitoring happens has changed a little. It is not the existing way. So that is why that is important. Here also you can have prepared introductions, prepared conclusions, and you can have a list of the dimensions that should be hit. Like introduction can be about how, what is governance, or any governance index of SDG or Niti Aayog index, or any think tank index on governance. And conclusion can be something like SDG or some committee recommendations. You have the Damodaran committee recommendation on governance, like something on solutions or something on some goal you can connect. And 8 features of good governance, I think it is from Niti Aayog index only, or no, it's about the general good governance, this thing. Consensus oriented, the general ones: accountability, responsibility, inclusiveness, participatory, this thing, rule of law, effectiveness, efficiency. These are very general ones, but you add examples, you add statistics, you add the status, then this becomes a very relevant dimension to analyze from. Then steps, okay, then e-governance is separately taken, so you have to have 1 to 2 pages on e-governance. Like that should include what are the, like one is what are the examples, and that examples are extremely important. And then somewhere you should have some status as well, because it's part of the static syllabus. You can search PIB, you can search somewhere, even in these notes as well, you'll have a lot of content. So in e-governance also, like what are the constituents, parts of e-governance? G to G, G to C, government to government to employees, government to businesses, government to this thing. So different parts and examples for each of it. Like G to G, government to government can be PFMS. Like in IPS training, I used to get salary. The PFMS system, public financial management system, I'll get an alert from PFMS that my salary has been deposited in my account. So that is like G to G. Like I am also a government official, government servant, government is sending me this thing. Or government to government, some other example. Government to business, like even e-NAM can be part of e-governance, something else. So in different models, it can be put in, the examples can be put in. So governance is relatively easy. You just need the structure, like, and some good examples. Like what is, you can start with why it was in use, and then you can talk about what are the what are the advantages of that, what are the pros. You can talk about what are the limitations or challenges, what are the issues. Like it can be lack of human resources, or lack of integration, lack of states getting on board. Like e-NAM, not all states are on board. Like you can talk about the challenges, then talk about going forward what needs to be done. And going forward what needs to be done, you can first talk about the steps government has taken. Secondly, you can even talk about case studies, like some case study from Kerala, or some case study from Delhi, some case study from UP, like any particular studies which you have collected. Like you have Duare Sarkar thing, famous schemes from different, I think Delhi or West Bengal, Duare Sarkar, Kerala has something else. You have the, like, different models of governance, you can quote it in the points. So that is mostly about governance. Governance, it is only 1 or 2 questions that will come. If you have some good dimensions, some good examples, some good value addition, governance is easier to prepare for. And e-governance has been specifically written separately. So anything related to e-governance in that particular year can be asked. Like even if Aadhaar makes a changeover, or something related to that direct benefit transfer. So DBT was asked with respect to governance. So that it's basically about how government works, any change in terms of how government plans, any change in terms of how government disperses funds, or any change in terms of how government is tracking, like the different schemes or the different programs, then that can be asked. So that was governance. Then we have social justice, development industry and all that. So we'll quickly look into all that. So this is like, I'll just quickly show my notes as well. So mostly, so this was like a collection of all the court cases. Like there are more, but these are like some general ones. Like Maneka Gandhi, Budhan Singh versus Navi Bucks, this thing. ADM Jabalpur, and some cases can be added from US judiciary and UK judiciary as well, like the Dred Scott case. Like one question was asked in PYQ as to how Indian comparison between Indian rule of law or right to equality and US. So you can have, we'll only have general points if we haven't prepared on them. But once it has come in a previous year question, it is our duty to prepare some content for that. So I prepared some, I collected some notes, like quick Googling can get you 5 important cases from US judiciary. Cases like Dred Scott, cases like Miranda justice, like right to silence Miranda, this thing, or something like Roe versus Wade was in news last time. Something like Bollinger versus Grutter, like some famous cases are there. You can correlate it with Indian cases. Like this case was for India, this was for USA, because a question was asked. UK cases also can be prepared. I prepared only 2-3 cases. So there were 2 famous Gina Miller cases. One was related to proroguing of parliament and one was related to something else. Like there was a question asked on how Indian and UK judiciary are converging in recent times. So if we don't have prepared notes on that particular year, we'll only be able to write some general content about how there is parliamentary supremacy or somewhere, or we have something else. Those are okay, but we need some, we need a little more of value addition, and especially since it has already come in the previous year questions. So you can prepare on those, and then you can even quote people like A.V. Dicey, Ivor Jennings. These are there in Lakshmikant, like rule of law, A.V. Dicey, Ivor Jennings spoke about this thing, basic structure, or different areas, like what are the dimensions to be hit, and some like these are all just value additions, not extremely important, but it gives some depth to the this thing analysis. Like some maxims also which are used by court also, something like just cogence. Like some laws are compelling laws, like even some constitutional cases, some constitutional case laws will become compelling laws compared to some other this thing. So you can use the maxim of just cogence, something like ratio decidendi. What is the rationale behind the court judgment? Like every judgment, there will be some statements which are made which are not in the judgment, somewhere the main crux of the judgment, and somewhere there will be a reason why that judgment was made. So even when you are having less dimensions to hit upon, you can use these to come up with dimensions. Like this was the crux of the judgment, so that is one point. One is why the judgment came, so that is the maximum of this thing, ratio decidendi. Then something like why it is not in judgment, but some things which some observations which were made by the court. So you have 3 dimensions to it. Again, like you are trying to come up with points. Then again, court cases. So these were like I think like Hadia case, MC Mehta, Novartis Rajwala. So these are like some extra content that I added. This is a book by former Justice Falias Nariman sir's book on state of the nation. Like not needed extra, these are just extra things. You can try to embellish it in introductions, conclusions somewhere if you want, but not extremely needed. But here also, like there are quotes by other judges. Like Justice Krishna Iyer noted that the basic rule of our criminal justice system is bail, not jail. Or Justice Kadju said that no contempt until it is impossible to physically administer justice. So these can be added in sedition. This can be added in a case related to Article 1921, like related to rights somewhere. It gives a little more depth. It gives a little more analysis. All these are like most of the content, like these are like comments, observations by judges, observations in court cases, even observations by constitutional thinkers like Granville Austin. These are there in Lakshmikant or other articles. Like Granville Austin noted that the 9 judges who signed the majority judgment in Keshavananda Bharati judgment performed an act of statesmanship. So like these are somewhere it can be used in analysis, somewhere it can be used as very strong arguments in favor or against, and even in introductions or conclusions. So this was my note on environmental case laws, like the draft TIA 2022 was this thing, Vellore Citizens Welfare, this thing, Adivasi Mazdoor Kisan Ekta Sanghadan case, like different case laws. If you, as I said, if you have 5 to 10 good case laws, including the crux of the judgment and some comments, you will have points to write for any question that comes from that area. And your depth to the answer, the quality of the analysis will also be a lot more better. And okay, so I'll just show how I made notes, and then how possibly you can also try to do. You can even improvise on this. So this is like center-state relations, federalism, or PRI. So this is like separately written in the syllabus. So this is like some of the introductions that I try to make. Like Randall Austin noted that we have cooperative federalism. India has something, a model which is known as cooperative federalism. Or KCVR noted that we have quasi-federalism, not actual this thing, like somewhere. So these are like some powerful statements which can be used in introductions, conclusions, or even you can start with article, like where does the constitution stand? What does the constitution say about a local self-government? It can be article 40 or 73rd, 74, this thing. Or like some comment of B.R. Ambedkar, Granville Austin, experts. And then, so introductions are prepared, conclusions are prepared. Like conclusion can also be a court judgment, or as I said, some committee recommendation. Like the S.R. Bommai judgment noted that states are not just stooges of the central government, they have independent constitutional relevance or standing. So that can be a powerful way to end your answer, like as to how the court itself noted that this in this particular case, as to why that is important. Or you can talk about the Sarkaria committee going forward, as noted by this committee, we have to do ABC. And then this is what I spoke about, the value addition, like statistics, quotes, recommendations or reports, laws, examples, and diagrams. These are like value additions which you should try to collect. And then, as I said, you have the intro, you have the conclusion, you talk about the different points to hit in terms of supporting or refuting, and then you try to use these to substantiate the points. Here also I try to collect some diagrams, like how the PRI system works, and some statistics, like 15th Finance Commission, like it talks about how, what is the disbursal, or what is Ministry of Panchayati Raj disbursal compared to something of a state government. Like you can use that number to say that the allocation for a particular local self-government is very low, or how the allocation for some body like the Mumbai municipality, Bombay municipality compares to that of a tier 2 or tier 3 city municipality allocation. These are like notes that you have to prepare, but it gives comparison, it gives a depth, it gives a lot more depth to your analysis. Then again, you can have some value addition in terms of some comments. These are all taken from newspaper articles only mostly, or some think tank articles in the Google, like what Galbraith's concept of functioning anarchy or concept of soft state. These are not very needed, but it gives a lot more, a little more depth, a little more embellishment. Somewhere you can talk about federalism, PRI, center-state relations, how democracy is in India. Like in GS2 especially, the answers improve if you add a lot more comparison, you add a lot more analysis, you add a lot more opinions about of different judgments, of different experts, of different countries, etc. Okay, now in terms of social justice, we'll see a little. So in society, like constitution, like some general intro conclusions can also be made. Something like how Granville Austin said that Indian constitution is mainly a social document, or how in conclusion the Venkatachalaya committee noted that the social revolution envisaged by the constitution is incomplete. Like anything which is, it's a very strong statement. We are trying to, but it is a very general thing. It can be connected to any incomplete goal that we are trying to complete. It can be hunger, it can be uplifting any particular vulnerable section. That's a very strong conclusion. Or it can be any general thing, like recently in some country some event happened, or some SDG, some goal we are trying to achieve. Okay. So this is what I was talking about, comparison of constitution. Like one page note, some cases, US, Dred Scott case, Brandenburg, Article 19, Dred Scott compared to ADM Jabalpur, like both were criticized. Marbury versus Madison, Miranda judgment, Article 20, Gruntler versus Bollinger, again Indira Soni, like comparison. Wainwright case, Article 39A, again DPSP, legal aid, again can be compared to Hussainera Khatoon case. Roe versus Wade, Dobbs versus Jackson, again abortion, how that can be compared to the some recent judgment of Supreme Court. Or tribal case, Samata judgment, McGirt versus Oklahoma, 4:3, they noted that like some basic crux of the judgment compared to some tribal judgment in India. That can be quoted in rights. Like it needn't be specifically a question about tribals. Any specific question on women specifically is not needed to quote a judgment related to tribals or women. You can quote it if the question is general, related to rights, because many a times in GS2 questions will be general, like related to rights. There you can, a separate point can be on women, separate point can be on tribals, separate point can be on a particular vulnerable section. So you can use these to come up with different points. This is UK Gina Miller cases, Wednesbury case, reasonable, unreasonable administration, judicial review, Ridge versus Baldwin. Like this is like just one page. You might think this is a little more, but this is just one page. It gives you a lot of comparison. It gives you a lot of value addition, and this is common previous year questions. So it has all the more relevance. And general, like this is how. So these are like some general introductions. Experts from newspapers, experts from constitution, like how Ambedkar noted that we made a constitution ransacking all major constitutions of the world. Like it can be a good conclusion saying that we have taken all the major good things and it is a living document as noted by court in some case. Or introduction can be this thing from expert view. And these are like the dimensions which can be hit if a question on comparison of India and US, India and UK. Like it's again the index of the Lakshmikant or index of the notes only, like parliament, parliamentary system, presidential system, fundamental rights, fundamental duties, separation of powers, federalism, local self-government, civil service. Like all these are not needed. Wherever you have a point, this is like a structure. Wherever you have a point for any of this, you use that. Okay, so the notes are made in such a way. So we'll talk a little about social justice. Okay, in social justice, we have development industry, NGO, SHG. Again, a lot of the content is static. We can prepare in terms of like Amartya Sen says, what is development? Or what is, it is the removal of unfreedoms. So any question you can have the same introduction, but if everyone is using the same, have a little more, use a little more of your creativity and come up with something extra. Or you can use something that is there in the current news, which has been relevant. Or you can use even constitutional article or some recommendation, some committee. In the conclusion, you can talk about, if it is NGO, you can talk about the Vijay Kumar committee on NGOs, noted that going forward there has to be a lot more freedoms, or like whatever it is said, you have to prepare because it is part of the syllabus. You have to have 1 or 2 pages on the notes for that area because it is specifically written in the syllabus with proper introduction, conclusion, because it gives you a structure. It's like in the actual mains, you are mostly on autopilot mode. Everybody says that it is there. It is a reality. You have very little time to think. So if you have a structure, if you know which all areas to be hit, like what is the structure? Okay, I start with status. What are the advantages? What are the challenges? What are the steps taken by government already? And what are the steps needed? So this is like a structure that I have prepared already. I know that, and if I have structures for different areas, then it is easier to come up with the points. I just have to put the points into the subheadings. And in terms of substantiating also, if I know the introduction, okay, I can start an introduction for this area in these ways. I can put in conclusion in these ways. It will be a lot more easier. Okay, so health, something like health. Again, I prepared introduction like Bandhu Mukti Morcha versus Union of India noted that right to health is part of right to life, Article 21. Any question on right to health? I'm not saying you should use the same introduction. I'm saying have prepared introductions which can be used in multiple areas. And these are like, either you can use it as an introduction or you can say that why it is important, because the court noted in this judgment, or because Article 21 says right to health, right to life is part of basic structure, court case noted in this judgment, or because in this case court noted that it is part of right to life, or because India is also trying to achieve SDG and SDG so and so tries to achieve this. And some diagrams, India's comparison with OECD or China or USA, or in terms of the different states also, as I said, you can even have a diagram of positive outliers, negative outliers, which states are performing better in terms of Niti Aayog index, which states are lagging. And here also some basic facts you will have to collect, like what is the status. Again, in health you will have to divide, like every area which you are preparing, try to look at in terms of what are the paths. Like if it is health, primary health, secondary, tertiary, mostly it will be primary and tertiary which will be asked. But what are the paths that are there? What is their status presently? What are the steps being taken by government or mooted by government right now? And going forward, what more needs to be done? So committee recommendations have very solid recommendations on, like for health we have like I have some notes, I don't remember the committee name, but we have some solid committee recommendations or even Niti Aayog committee recommendations. India this thing, that report, or multiple committee reports have a lot of recommendations, so you can use that also. And then have some statistics as well. Basically notes how you have to prepare for the mains is like relatively easy, unlike prelims where you have to, like, you don't know literally from where it can be asked. In mains it is a lot more predictable, like you can fairly guess that it will come from these areas, it can come from this area, it is either previous year question again asked, or it is static part separate, you have to have a note, it will be asked from that, or it will be from syllabus area, like syllabus static area, previous year or current, in that 1 year if it has been important, relevant. So you can have one page content on that, and then use the general notes that you have prepared, which can be used in multiple areas. It should be very value rich so that it can be relevant in a lot of the questions that are asked from that area. It's like poverty. So what can be a good introduction? Like a good introduction can be like anything, like why it's a constitutional goal, or what is poverty defined by somebody, or what is a new index saying about India, what is multidimensional poverty index noting about India. It is noted like poverty is reduced to 11%. So it's putting a context, it's putting some news background, it's putting a context to the this thing, and then you can talk about the different dimensions in terms of, it can be urban poverty. If the question is separately about urban poverty, you should only talk about it. If it is not only about urban poverty, as I said, look into what are the paths: urban poverty, rural poverty, poverty in terms of opportunities. Like you can again talk about the types of poverty. It can be aspirational poverty, it can be in terms of opportunities, choices, as noted by Amartya Sen, or it can be in terms of basic necessities, what we used to have like analyzed previously. And then what are the schemes existing? What are the schemes needed going forward? What are the changes needed? So you can prepare on that also. Civil service, like everything, every part of the syllabus have 1-2 page notes, have some ready-made structures. If a question on civil service comes, what are the dimensions I should be hitting? What are the comparisons I can do? What are the diagrams I can make? What, like this is like Weber's view on how civil service should be. Like it should be driven by expertise, it should be driven by rules, it should be impersonal, it should be objective. You can compare it with the new idea about how Niti Aayog notes that our civil service should be dynamic. It should not be just rule driven. It should be more dynamic. It should be driven. It should be like outcome based, or like very evidence based policy making and all that. Again, like the some statistics, like how many districts, what is the ranking, what is any this thing you can collect, and some examples also. Like what are the articles, what does TSR Subramaniam case talk about civil service, what does HOTA committee recommendation talk about, what are the different committees, what are the different recommendations of these committees, all that. Like the structure is same, it's all statistics, quotes, recommendations, laws, examples, diagrams. You have the basic introduction set, you have value addition, you divide it into subheadings, you have the good conclusions already prepared. This is it, this is all that is about mains answer writing. Again, hunger, everything is similar. The value addition is what you can add. Again, don't add value addition more than 1 or 2 pages because you can't revise it. Whatever note you are reading from newspaper, just add it into, like you can divide it in terms of statistics, quotes, recommendations, or examples. Just add one word or one line into it. So all of your notes related to hunger, all of your notes related to local self-government will be restricted to 1 page, 2 page, including the solutions, including case studies, like how some panchayat in Kerala is doing this, or some panchayat like Odandurai in Tamil Nadu has solar, like case studies, examples, everything in 1 page, 2 page. Like if the structure is ready, you just have to put everything into that structure. So this is basically about GS2. We spoke about polity, constitution, we spoke about IR, social justice, governance a little. So now we'll look at GS3 a little. We'll take a 2-minute break and then we'll resume. Hello. Hello. Hi, Lankit. So I've taken a 2-minute break. We'll continue. It's going well, decent.
Okay. The diagram compilation is really good. So, like I just shared it on the Telegram channel.
Okay.
Like there are like some unconventional diagrams as well. Like for instance, like wastewater and like all that.
Yeah, almost.
Like no one made graph of wastewater.
Correct.
So it was very different. It is good. Actually,
Oh, I'm sorry. What do I do? On. Ah. Okay. Okay. So, like, we'll continue with GS3. So I'll just show some diagrams which are collected part of GS3. GS3. So the thing about GS3, what I feel is like at least in last 2-3 years, the marks are less. Like GS3 is not giving 120, 130 as it used to. It is mostly giving 90s. Even 100 is like very very high. 90s, 80s is the norm. But still GS3 is an area where you have to prepare a lot. Like you have a lot of subdivisions, a lot of areas. So you have to prepare a lot on GS3. And you never know every year. Like some year it could be the year of GS3. Like now GS2 and GS4 are giving a lot of marks, 120 and all, 130 and all is giving. But you never know. Like some other year it can again come back to GS3. And GS3 also, what if your marks fall down to 60? Even 10 marks, 20 marks makes a lot of difference. So GS3 is also very important. And in GS3, the importance of factual intensity is more. Like in GS2, we try to say that we can talk about a lot of analysis in terms of expert opinion, in terms of like facts, in terms of raw statistics were less, like in articles, rights and all that. It is more in terms of analysis, in terms of constitutional analysis, in terms of judgments, in terms of all of that. But in GS3, at least the economy, because it is economy, it is agriculture, environment, science and tech, it is more in terms of actual factual statistics and content. It is very content heavy. Like even if it is a very general question on agriculture, you will have to know some facts. You will have to substantiate it with more facts, more examples and more all that. So the value addition content in GS3 is much more. So some diagrams I prepared, like this is like I would say it is not that important, but it again gave me a sort of confidence that any question that I have a lot of extra diagrams, extra value addition, like which can be used in that area, in general in that area, and which is not there. It is possibly not there with any other person. And it improves the presentation also. Like let's take this thing. This is about science and tech. So in science and tech, what are the areas? Space is there. Nanotech is there. Like some diagrams might be decent, some might be a little more like not that relevant some years. This is nanotech, this is space, this is biotech. We have robotics, we have nuclear energy. So questions are mostly from some of this. It can be biotech, some questions, something from nanotech, something from nuclear technology, space technology. Like space technology, what is India's share of space industry versus US share of space industry? If a general question on development of ISRO, development of space tech, development of private this thing in space, or comparison of how India is becoming stronger in space, this type of graphs can be used. Like how like this is like comparing. It can also be, this is like the budget of Chandrayaan 3, 600 crores, budget of Chandrayaan 2, 980 crores, budget of Mars orbiter mission 450 crores, and what generally they say that it is lesser than interstellar budget, that is 1000 crore. It's like a very simple, like it's a random fact, but it gives it can be used to substantiate the fact that our space industry is much efficient and cost effective than the other industries, to the extent that our space missions, which are equal or better in terms of quality than many other countries, but then cheaper than even a movie. So it's just a random fact, but it can even be used to substantiate a solid argument that we are putting forward. Something like how, so this is like, because a lot of emphasis is being put on private sector participation, how startups are increasing in space. This is like how the pickup in space, this thing has moved in the last 20 years, 2003 to 2023, from one startup in 2003 to about 140 plus in 2023. It's like a random fact. You don't have to have the exact 142, 143. Even a general thing like from about 1 to 100 plus, 1 to 150, roughly 150. Even this graph in itself is not that important, but it again improves the presentation, it improves the analysis, India US comparison, India this thing, like how ISRO budget compares to NASA budget. Ours is 12,000 crore, theirs is $25 billion if the facts are, if I'm not wrong. So the point being, it gives comparison, it gives analysis, it gives some depth to your arguments. Similarly, some diagrams in terms of budget, in terms of comparison, in terms of the different areas. Like if we are talking about IT industry, like which area is more? Like BPM is 23%. It's again not very important, but somewhere some such diagrams, such value additions can be useful. Similarly for biotech, similarly for robotics, nuclear, like what is the 2022 installed tech in India, like total installed tech versus nuclear installed tech, or India versus France. India's contribution of nuclear technology is only about 20% or 2.1% or something, like whatever it is, versus France, which is 68%. It again improves the presentation, improves the analysis. We are adding comparisons with actual statistics, raw statistics. So all of this can also be used similarly for all of the areas in the syllabus. Again, even targets, like this is our existing 2032 target for nuclear is 2000 megawatts if I'm not wrong. 2050 target is 20,000. So these are also like again, like it can be used in way forward, or it can be used in why it is important, or status, or things like that. Security, internal security. Again, the different paths, defense forces, police, intelligence forces, CAPFs, different paths specifically mentioned: terrorism, organized crime, money laundering, cybercrime, border issues. In all of that, having some statistics, these serve you can use these graphs either as separate graphs for presentation, or you can use these content as statistics in some argument that you're giving, like India's according to SIPRI report, the number of nukes that India has versus something. It is like random. You can say it is like according to this report, so that you are saying it's not your idea. Again, what is the budget, India's defense budget compared to China's defense budget, or something like that. Manpower, again this is like too much of content, but if possible you can prepare a little bit of content, because it will give you a lot of confidence. Any general question you can, if any general question on internal security, you can add statistics in terms of nuclear. It is again relevant in IR, it is relevant in security. In terms of actual defense forces comparison, because comparison increases your analysis, improves your analysis like anything. In terms like all of this can be used as a separate dimension for internal security, for even IR, because security is part of hard power. Okay. Again, terrorism, like incidents in JNK, how they are reducing, how left-wing extremism diagram, this thing is reducing according to some think tank. Like I took it from Vivekananda International Foundation. So like again, you can quote that, have separate statistics. Cyber, like it was only 53,000, now it is 14 lakh plus cases. Some statistics. Similarly, diagrams are there for environment. Like environment, again separately some areas are mentioned. One is biodiversity, one is conservation, one is pollution, one is EIA. So for each of this, as I said earlier, introduction, conclusion, body, what are the dimensions? In that body, again to substantiate each dimension, you have to have statistics, you have to have quotations of experts or something, you have to have examples. If you're saying air pollution is high, you have to quote like in Delhi this is so much PM2.5 or 2.5. Even if you say it is high, it's okay. But if you say that this is so much, it's in this category, the PM2.5 level is so much, it increases the this thing. And you don't have to have statistics for all the areas, because air pollution is separately noted. Pollution is separately noted in syllabus. You have to have a note on that. You have to have statistics, quotes, recommendations on that. And air pollution, because it has been in news for a very long time, because every year Delhi pollution goes bad. So in that manner, you can prepare some general notes in terms of statistics, recommendations, examples, diagrams, all that. This is like comparing, like air pollution, Hyderabad is so much, Bangalore is so much. Like just substantiating an argument that the air pollution in Indian cities has worsened with solid facts that 40 micrograms per millimeter cube or something like that. Like I'm saying that this is there, I'm putting forward an argument and I'm substantiating it with actual raw facts. But this is something that I prepared beforehand, which I can use in many questions related to pollution, many questions related to environment. So it has better input to output ratio. So I'm only preparing diagrams, statistics and examples for areas which are specifically mentioned in syllabus or which is common current in that 1 year repetitively, like multiple times, or which was asked previously. And these will not be many, like most of the previous year questions are from syllabus areas, and most of the current things are also from that subheadings only. Like air pollution is there in syllabus, it is there in current, it is a previous year question, so it is like very much important to have notes on that. Again, water pollution, land crisis, biodiversity, because it is separately mentioned in syllabus, diagrams and all that. Okay, so now we'll talk about all these. We'll see this question paper as well. We'll see the 22 paper because we'll be discussing the 23 mini questions tomorrow. Okay, 22 general studies. Okay, so one question is, what is PPP? First question is PPP. Why is PPP required in infrastructural projects? Again, specifically mentioned in economy part, infrastructure part. Why is it needed? Examine the role of PPP in the redevelopment of railway stations. So here, one way, unlike in GS2, where still a lot of the like whatever notes in terms of actual syllabus you prepare, like basic structure, if you have made 2 pages, that note can still be used because questions are directly asked as to whether basic structure, like some argument on basic structure. But here, sometimes questions are asked in terms of some, like a little more detail. Like we will be preparing on PPP. Previously, some questions have been asked about whether PPP is required and all that. Now they are asking in terms of whether PPP is useful in railways, like a particular infrastructure sector. And you can even analyze it in terms of, like, they are connecting 2 areas in the syllabus. Like PPP is there, infrastructure, rail, air, water is there. So they are asking how PPP in rail is important. So after a question similar to this is come in PYQ, it is your duty to have some notes, some content on PPP separately and PPP in each of the different areas, rail, water, air. It need not be so much. It can only be half a page of note, but it will still give you something, some specifics, some dimensions to attempt an answer if something like that comes up again. Then, is inclusive growth possible under market economy? Significance of financial inclusion, direct syllabus, previous year question, everywhere. It is like, it's direct, it's actually a it's kind of a full toss kind of question. What are the major challenges of PDS in India? How can it be made effective and transparent? This is also direct, considering in syllabus it is said, it talks about public distribution, PDS, public distribution system. It talks about agricultural subsidies and all that. So PDS is like basic, it's again direct, part of PYQ, part of syllabus. Fourth question, elaborate the scope and significance of food processing industry. Again, direct syllabus, in previous year question, in current, everywhere. So basically my point, the point that I want to drive home is the fact that there will be at least 25%, 30% questions which are directly syllabus, like FPI, food processing industries, or something like PPP, something like financial inclusion. Like some questions at least will be directly from a syllabus area that they've mentioned. So if you have prepared 2 pages, 3-page notes on the syllabus area with all the necessary value addition, introductions, conclusions, committee recommendations, problems, steps taken by the government, steps needed in future, case studies from India, from abroad, comparisons, all that, then you can attempt any question very, very well. So that will give you like 5-6 questions which you can attempt very, very well. Then you will have some questions which are in current, like in GS3, the proportion of questions from current that is asked is a little more than GS2. So here something like do you think, okay, India will meet 50% of its energy needs from renewable energy by 2030? So that we had renewed targets in renewable energy. So that is part of current. Again, very much important in news because it was part of India's revised goals. So that is like some direct question from current. Then we have something like James Webb Space Telescope in 2021, but it was in news again in 21, 22 and all, 23 and all. So it is also directly from current, but still the current, the idea or the way to pick up questions or the way to predict questions from current is possibly by guessing 10-20 most important things. If you've been following newspaper, you'll have a basic idea about which areas were in use for quite some time. So those are very important, like Chandrayaan. For India, Chandrayaan was in front page, in columns, it was there for quite some time, so it's very important. In that way, you can pick up 10, 15 topics from science and tech, from environment, from especially internal security, environment, science and tech, disaster and all that. Economy and agriculture, little more vast, but still you can see which all areas were more in use. Like some scheme completing 25 years, something which has had some new analysis, some new report saying contradicting or supporting something like how poverty is reduced in India, Niti Aayog report quoting that poverty has come down so much, or something like similar things. So you can predict current issues like 10, 15 most important things. Have some solid notes. If you have solid notes, you can attempt those current affairs questions as well. Principle behind vaccine development, again current. This is asked in 2022. 2020 and 21 we have had we've been reading about vaccine development, different types of vaccines and all that. So that is also current. So again, point being, 5-6 questions are directly, 5 to 6 or even 5 to 10 questions will be directly static. At least 5 to 7 questions will be from current. Like if you take security, Naxalism is a social, economic and developmental issue manifesting as a violent internal security threat. In this context, discuss the emerging issues and suggest a multi-layered strategy to tackle the menace of Naxalism. It is a static question. It's if you have notes about Naxalism, status, and some recent events to substantiate here and there. Even if you don't have current additions, still your static notes on Naxalism can serve the purpose. So this is a static question. You have solid notes. If you've solved the PYQ, you can easily answer this question. So then this question, different elements of cybersecurity, keeping in view challenge in cybersecurity, examine the extent to which India successfully developed a comprehensive national cybersecurity strategy. Again, static. The question might seem as if you need like it's a current thing or how it's talking about analysis, examination. But again, examination, this is again part of your notes. Like your notes should logically have content on what are the different steps taken, what are the steps needed, what are the issues, what are this thing, and then what are the elements of cybersecurity, what types of cyber threats are there. So all of this is again static. So internal security questions are again many times like unlike international relations where it is direct, a little more current. Here if you have some content on all the different parts like money laundering, cybersecurity, internal like left-wing extremism, all that, you can decently attempt the answers. It's again static. This is current. Causes and effects of coastal erosion, part of disaster management, but it was important in that year or last 2 years, so it is being asked. Like again, we'll talk about disaster management in detail. So point being, from the previous year questions, like at least 5 to 7 questions will be current. At least still half of the questions are still from static, if not more. So if you prepare properly on the static and read one compilation and a newspaper, you can still ace the GS3 very well. Okay. So this is my GS3 note. So we started disaster management, the smaller things first. So disaster management, some frames. Again, disaster questions are either disaster strategy, like what is India's framework, which are the bodies, which are the legislations, what are the existing framework, international agreements or things that India has agreed to, India is part of, and what are the issues. So we have the Sendai, we have the Hugo, NDMA, SDMA, DDMA framework, and in that also I think we have the basic framework, MHA, NDMA, NIDM, NDRF, SDMA, DDMA, and parallelly we have the NCMC, National Crisis Management Committee, we have the Executive Committee, we have the CAPFs, NEC, National. So it's just the framework, how the system works, and then so you have to know how the system works, which are all the different players in it, NDRF, NDMA, NEC, all that. Then you have to know like NIDM, NDRF, NDMA, SDMA, DDMA. Then which are the body agreements that India is part of, or goals like Sendai, Hugo, and then have some examples like from notes, like from current affairs whenever you are reading, like some, like you can just make note like this, like this is earthquake or cloudburst, Pettimudi, Chamoli, earthquake, landslide, whichever things are there in news, have a note of examples. Point being, the notes should be like very low. Like it should be, whole disaster management note should be like 3 pages, so that you can revise it very easily. It should have the structure. So basic structure is again like one can be before, during, after, like dividing the answer into before, during, after, with examples, with steps taken by government, and going with case studies, and going forward what more needs to be done. Again, you can have expert committee recommendations, Kasturi Rangan committee. What does it say? You don't need to have 2-page notes. You need to have only 1 line, 2 line. Like if this is my note on Kasturi Rangan, like 1, like just the solid fact, 2, 3. In 1 line, I can have the whole notes, whole recommendation. Gadgil committee, Char Dham committee, Ravi Chopra committee, JC Pant committee on disaster management. Like I have 4-5 committees, and I have the bodies and examples. Any question that comes, I know the structure, I have the examples, I have solutions by committees. So I just have to play around with all this. And then what are the paths? It can again be like before, like pre-disaster, prevention, mitigation, adaptation, post, again relief, response, recovery, rehabilitation. So you have the parts of the disaster management, which all areas. Like if you are having, like you don't know much of the question, but still you have a good structure. Like you start with an example. Okay, this Chamoli landslide has again brought about focus into this earthquake or landslide or whatever. That is the introduction. And then in the body you talk about like problems in pre-disaster phase, in prevention phase, problems in relief phase, problems in rehabilitation phase. In that way you can analyze it. And going forward, what are the steps taken? Going forward, what more needs to be done? As noted by JC Pant committee, we have to do this, etc. So these are like structures, and these are like my value addition, as I said: statistics, stat, quote, report, law, example. Statistics, like general ones. India, 75% of Indian districts are vulnerable. India is 5th most vulnerable. These are like general in terms of a general question on disaster management is asked, or wherever possible. And it's like it is something which you prepare. You have like, I have 2-3 pages notes of disaster management, but if I write an answer, if I can use something from this, the output is better. Like I don't have to read 10-20 pages of notes, but I still have a lot of value addition. My answer will still stand out. Like it can be value addition in terms of each disaster also, like this person earthquake prone, this person this thing. And then what are the bodies? You can quote Terry, like Energy Research Institute, CSE, Sunita Narayan, expert on environmental issues. You can talk about COP26. You can talk about scheme, Apda scheme on by Government of India for disaster management. You can talk about way forward. This is like anything with disaster management. You can make a frame, and depending on the disaster, you can like tweak it. Specific action plans, existing infra, using common service centers, using this, using that, capacity building of, depending on the question, which functionary, awareness building, according to the question, you tweak. Finance, again, how do you bring, like this is like solutions. Going forward, I have to have these bodies, I have to have these funds, I have to use PPP, I have to use multiple common service centers or panchayat, gram sabha level planning, like usual things, but according to the question you tweak it. Okay, and then these are the bodies, these are the acts in the bodies, recommendations. These are examples: Kerala 2018 flood, Chennai, Chamoli cyclones. Okay, so that is disaster management. So disaster management, again, how do you prepare? Disaster management is simple. Mostly questions, you should have a basic framework about the structure, about the answer. It's like before, during, after, before disaster, after disaster, some statistics, some committee recommendations, some examples, and mostly prepare on major disasters that are coming in the news that year. That particular year, if something major has happened, it'll be hardly 5 disasters you can predict. So that will be more important. In general, then how is the India's disaster management strategy, bodies, laws, structure, and what more needs to be done? That is static, you can prepare. So that is about disaster management. Again, 2 or 3 questions will come, but still important. Next is internal security. So again, okay. So this is my notes for internal security is again very like in terms of value addition. And then again, internal security, it is separately noted about Naxalism, cyber security, money laundering. So we have to have 1 or 2 page notes about each issue, including value addition, statistics, quotes, recommendations, examples, as I said. So here, this is like statistics, like Niti report says that 200 out of 535 districts has some form of violence. or 2.5% of GDP is lost, or something like that. Global terrorism index, this rank. Global cybersecurity index, this rank. It can be used as an introduction, or it can be used in substantiating that this is increased. In bracket, you can say as noted by this index. Or like what is the present status, left-wing extremism in 7 states, 90 districts, or if it is changed accordingly. Press freedom index, democracy index, or something. So that is statistics, quotations. Experts, you can quote Ajit Doval sir, like if he has said some famous this thing in paper in those 3 months. He's the NSA. So you can quote the NSA, something noted by the NSA, like India strategy, or you can even use it in argument for or against. You can quote experts like Army Chief or CDS, Home Secretary, MHA. These are not needed, but these are all like you can add, like you are trying to increase the factual intensity of the answers. Then experts, like if it is policing, Prakash Singh, sir's views, or like sir writes articles in Indian Express or Hindu. So you can take something from that. Like General G.D. Bakshi or General H.S. Panag writes in something. So you can take arguments or some points from the columns you read in Hindu and Express as well. Then what are the reports? So internal security again has a lot of reports, like Shakirkar Committee on Defense. It has a lot of, like any question on internal security going forward you can write, like if you know, like you have collected some proper points from Shakirkar Committee, Besbirwa Committee on Northeast, Madhukar Gupta on Border, Gulshan Rai Committee on Cyber Security, Meena Hemachandra Committee on Cyber Security, AFSPA, Jeevan Reddy Committee, like all these are like, only these areas are asked. So anywhere when you're quoting recommendations, solutions going forward, what needs to be done, you can quote these expert recommendations. But the only thing is you will have to collect 2 to 3 solid points from each of this, or whichever other committees are in use or you come across. You can also quote, so depending on the case, like if it is border, okay, this committee, this case, this expert. And then what are the laws associated? For border, there will be some particular law. For money laundering, PMLA. So have at least 2 to 3 points for PMLA Act also. Some even for the law, because any question in the mains, part of the syllabus, the law, the structure, the bodies are also important. So what is the existing framework, including the law, including the scheme, including the bodies associated? You will have to have some content. Don't need a lot of content, but at least 5 points, 5 solid points, because the general points that you will be trying to come up with will be very, very vague. If you have some solid points, it will be better. It will improve the analysis. So which are the laws? What are the examples? Like in news, there will be some events that is happening, like Northeast, some Manipur issue. You can quote the event, the place also. You can quote left-wing extremism, something improved, like Buddha Pahad event or something like that. If it is in news, you can add 2611, Pulwama, Manipur issue, all that examples. Depending on the question, depending on the area you're preparing notes, you can make note of. Again, these are some like steps taken by the government. Like we have IMSAs, we have the Information Fusion Center, we have the Indian Maritime Awareness Center. These are all like the body steps taken by government. Wherever like a question comes, to make it holistic, you can talk about the steps taken by government. Again, you can divide it into bodies, law, example, if you have time. Else just briefly note all the things that comes to your mind at that point of time. Like we have the bold kit for border, CIBMS, comprehensive integrated border management system. You have the tri-service, this thing, NAT grade, CCTNS. All these are steps taken. So depending on the question, demand of the question, you can talk about the steps taken, and for steps needed, you can talk about the committee recommendations. Okay, and some diagrams again I tried to collect for internal security. So this is again based on how many questions are being asked. Like about 4 questions are being asked. So I wanted to prepare like 2 to 3 general, like specific and general diagrams for each area, so that I have enough content for any question. So cyber, what are the areas? I have money laundering, I have cyber, I have terrorism, I have external non-state extractor. So here cyber, what is the case, like how is it increasing, or what are the different types, areas, deep surface web, types of this thing, types of cyber crimes. Or in terrorism, like comparison in J&K, what is the issue, what is the level of stone pelting, or something like that. And even a general issue like development, like linkages between development and extremism. like how something like governance deficit leads to unemployment, leads to weak socio-economic indicators, leads to alienation, leads to increase in violence. Like this is again a very generic diagram. You can add specifics like how, like in increase in LWE, you can quote the stat. Like in governance deficit, you can quote an example. In unemployment, you can quote the number. Like this is again pre-prepared. Again, internal security areas are limited. It's either northeast or terrorism, which all areas are there. Northeast is there. You can prepare on JNK, northeast, left-wing extremism areas, cyber security. There are again hotspots like Asansol, like some areas. So it is predictable. The areas are predictable. You should have some content. Okay, external state, non-state actors. Again, it's a very general diagram. Like we have this axis, western axis. We have an eastern axis. We have an Indian Ocean axis. Then like I have a diagram. Like in China, from China, like China supported, apparently, allegedly, China supported NDFB, ULFA. Pakistan supported LET, JEM. Again, Myanmar, Manipur, PLA. So we are adding specific bodies, groups that are associated or in news. You can and which issues they were involved in, which area they were involved in, which state actor, which non-state actor. So these are state actors. You can, to be safer, you can say allegedly, you can say according to some expert. These are non-state actors. And so basically diagrams again can be used in multiple ways. Okay, so that is about it. So security. So we'll talk about security a little more, how to go about security. So security basically, 4 questions, roughly 4 questions will come. Let's say plus or minus 1, 2. Security, again, the areas are very safe, like safely we can guess it's border, it's separately given, border, money laundering, terrorism, all of that. So we have 5, 6 areas. You have to prepare notes for each area, 2 pages, 1 page, having like introduction, some index, some status, some recent event, conclusion as noted by this committee, or going forward as noted by this expert, or even you can yourself suggest that going forward these ABC needs to be done, 1, 2, 3 needs to be done. In the body, again, what is the status, what is the, again depending on the question, but again, what is the status presently, what are the issues, what is the structure presently, what are the issues, what are the advantages, what are the steps taken, what more needs to be done, with examples, with diagrams if possible, and all the value addition. Okay, and again, in terms of what is there in current in that particular year, some things will be a little more important because you'll feel that it was in news a lot more, or some events have a lot more intensity. Like, let's say in one particular year, hypothetically, if Naxalism increases or cybersecurity, let's say, cybersecurity or a particular form of cyber threat increases drastically, then it will be news for a very long time. Examples, events will be news for a very long time. So you'll have to prepare separately. Otherwise, questions are generally in based on the broad theme and any particular analysis from that. So broadly, if you prepare notes, you can use them. Okay, so now we'll talk about agriculture. No, we'll talk about environment, science and tech, disaster, security. So now we have environment. We'll talk about environment as well. I think environment notes are basically mostly from current. So I've taken some content from the compilations from the newspapers and some from PYQ. So again, hardly 3-4 questions will come. Again, it is restricted to what is there in syllabus. It's either pollution. So what pollution, depending on the year, air pollution or water pollution, biodiversity, any particular scheme or something, any particular this thing, if it is in use majorly, that will be there. Else environmental impact assessment, because the rules were changed, that a question was asked, or in general about EIA, how important is it, or a comparison between EIA and something else. Like basically, if you have an idea about EIA, you can again answer the question on EIA. So it is either biodiversity, it is either conservation or pollution or EIA. There's only 4 things that can come from environment. It is again you can safely predict the questions, because whichever, if you take the top 10, 15 events in the current affairs from that environment area, you can safely predict the questions. It can be some, if like let's say if Project Tiger is in news majorly, Project Elephant is in news, like majorly something major is happening, then that is important. Or something like EIA rules have changed, or there's a proposal to have some other body, some other legislation, something like that, forest rules have changed, something is changed, then it's important. Then other than that, environment they can connect with pollution. So pollution, air pollution, water pollution separately, some particular scheme, sometimes air quality index, or government approach, like steps taken by government, analyze what are the dimensions, how well they are performed, what more are needed. So if a question on PYQ like separately on air pollution has come, your analysis, your notes should be to that level. Like I think a question on air pollution was asked to the level that what are the different parameters or dimensions of the air quality index or things like that. So to that level it was asked. So then now you should have note on the different parts of air quality index and some diagram, and what is the status now, and if air quality index is asked, something like what other things are there in air quality. One is index, some other scheme or something is there, water quality also something, Namami Gange, something major is there. Little bit of points, like not a lot of content, like 2-3 points, 3-4 lines, 5 lines of good content. Okay, now we'll talk about economy and agriculture. Okay, we'll talk about economy, then we'll come to agriculture. That is agriculture, no? We'll start with non-agri part of economy, then we'll come to agri, end with agri. So like government budgeting. So government budgeting is like simple. It's like mostly questions will be from government budget that year, like any major theme, any major issue we are trying to solve, anything that is any major new idea that is in use, like direct benefit transfer earlier was a major idea, new idea. Something like universal basic income was a major idea that was in circulation, in discussion. So in that particular year that was important. So some major themes or ideas like that come in your year of preparation, then that is important. Otherwise mostly it is the budget, things that come in the budget, and the economic survey. But still you can have some basic content dimensions and all for the budget as well, like what is the degree of military spending, developmental spending, subsidy spending. Again, hard facts, but GS3 you need a little more of facts is what I feel, because it gives a little edge. Then so these are the questions also, I think. So one is okay, what are the articles, what are the different committees which are looking into this, what are the bodies which are in use, like PM Gati Shakti also can be connected to budgeting, because budgeting also has different phases, including the implementation phase can be connected. So you can connect PM Gati Shakti, National Infrastructure Plan, National Monetization Plan, DFI, all that can be connected, can be asked. So depending on the year, like which all areas are there, it can be asked. So this is budget 22-23. So in that the different headings, like in terms of direct taxes, in terms of indirect taxes, in terms of financial investments, in terms of inclusive development, inclusive. So these are the major headings, major themes, and broadly it comes from the economic survey or budget thing. Formulation of budget, different social sector expenditure, sustainability, what is the debt to this thing, what is the debt, what is comparison with something else. Participatory budget, whether what is the level of sustainability, green expenditure, how green is the budget, or gender budgeting, zero budget, or performance based budgeting, or all of that. And every stage of the budget, making of the budget, if any new change, and implementation of the budget, any new change in monitoring, anything comes, that's important. Okay, that's about government budgeting. It's relatively easier, it's mostly on the budget. If I have to simplify it very simply, it's entirely from the budget, whatever is important on the budget. Next is inclusive growth. Again, this is static part. So here mostly question will be how, general question on inclusive development, or something like how broad based our growth has been, or how broad based our development has been, how effectively we've been able to pull people out of poverty, and how we can like how much wider we have to interpret the concept of poverty as such, because our concept of poverty should extend to the idea of aspirational poverty or even much more. And okay, inclusive growth, like again, like in terms of poverty, some statistics, You can talk about the Gini coefficient, Piketty, like general things. What are the dimensions? You can talk about Human Development Index indicators. It gives you some 5 to 6 indicators: health, education, life expectancy. So if a general question comes, you can talk about these dimensions. Human capital formation, human capital index, it has some dimensions. You can talk about that. You can talk about how equitable the growth is in terms of regions, in terms of different communities, how tribals are faring with the rest of the general public, or women, or different, or how our different sectors are performing, how agriculture vis-a-vis the other sectors. All of that compares how the urban urban populace compares vis-a-vis the rural populace. All of these are dimensions which you can talk about in equitable inclusive growth. And then equitable growth, again, gender, private versus public, cooperatives, farm producer organizations, PPP, health, education, how much of emphasis is being given to health and education. Like all of this comes under this thing, financial inclusion. And then depending on the question, you use the points which are relevant. Then so some committees are also there, Rangarajan committee on financial inclusion, but don't just quote the committee, have some specifics from the committee, like what did the committee specifically say. Like it spoke about increasing access to micro insurance, micro equity and micro banking facilities, or any particular three. Like always take at least three solid recommendations from committees. Like again, inclusive development has now been seen in a much larger way, that even sustainable development is part of inclusive development. You can't have inclusive development without being sustainable. So again, SDGs are also important. How NAPCC, how all the things in current related to environment can be asked in inclusive development. They can ask, connect inclusive development, poverty and sustainability. Something like air pollution can be connected to poverty or right to health and inclusive growth. So it's not that hard. It's just about connecting, having content for sustainable development, for inclusive development, and connecting all the dots. And again, poverty as a separate thing, like how poverty is estimated, is like part of static. Not very important, but still you have to have an idea. You can never know. Like a question on, like you should have content on how poverty is estimated, what is the present poverty levels, and again poverty in terms of different committees, Tendulkar committee, this committee, in terms of Niti Aayog, what are the dimensions, and in that which all areas we have improved, which all areas we have not improved. Like I think sanitation, Niti Aayog, multidimensional poverty index, I think access to electricity and some areas we are still lagging, or things like some things we have improved much more, some dimensions we have not improved much. I think in the dimension diagrams, so these are like diagrams from the economic survey. Fiscal deficit, forex, inflation, GDP, agri, industrial, they can also be used. And similarly, health, hunger, all of that, everything have a, like you can get a lot of content from either survey or government body, this thing, or PIB, and then use it. Okay, so that is about poverty, inclusive development. Again, safe topic. 1 or 2 questions can come. If you have some good content, some good value addition, you can easily answer the question well. After inclusive development, we have planning. Planning, again, not like separately questions are not being asked, but still, because it is there in the syllabus, you should have some content about planning commission versus Niti Aayog, or how planning works from the local level, from, as I said, from the PRI through Gram Panchayat Development Plan, GPDP, or Aspirational Development Plan, to the bigger panchayat level, to the district planning committee, to the state development boards, to how it is being reached, how it is reaching Niti Aayog, or even PMO. PMO is using Pragati, Gati Shakti, all that. So this is like a basic idea about you should be having a basic idea about what are the direction in which the planning happens, which are the bodies involved, and what are the, like, horizontally and vertically. Like we used to have the 5-year plans, then the planning commission, then the Niti Aayog. Now we are focusing more on the local level, like Gram Panchayat Development Plan, Aspirational Development Blocks, Prakriti, Aspirational Development Plan, not districts. Now we are planning aspirational blocks also. So what are the levels at which we are trying to look into planning, and then whatever is in news in that particular year. And you can have some basic idea about the different 5-year plans also, but not much. So I have made all like major points only so much for each 5-year plan, just one line. If at all hypothetically a question comes, I should have at least 2 to 3 solid points. You can generally predict like before this year 1970s, the 5-year plans were focusing on this, but still have some content on the different 5-year plans as well. Not so much of importance for planning. Mostly GS3 is focused on current questions. So questions like Gati Shakti, budget, something like urban planning, something like Gram Panchayat development plan. All these are part of planning, but more related to current affairs. So generally that is more relevant, but still have some content on the static part as well. Mobilization of resources, again, it will be mostly questions will be from static part or the budget part. It will be mostly from budget part, any particular area. Like if a new tax has been introduced, it can be tax, it can be non-tax, it can be equity, it can be debt, it can be through banks, it can be through NBFCs, it can be through development financial institutions. Like what are the players, what are the ways, debt or equity, tax or non-tax, capital markets or money market. Like these are just parts of the question, and depending on a question that is being asked, you can use these to come up with points. Mostly here also questions will be from the budget or major areas like crypto. Like a question on crypto can be asked, like taxation of cryptocurrency or digital assets, something like that. How relevant is it? It's related to mobilization of revenue, mobilization of resources. Questions like NIP, National Infrastructure Plan, mobilization, National Monetary Pipeline, green bonds, all that, forex reserve, all that is related to this. Again, some statistics, what is the tax to GDP, Indian GDP, direct tax selection, indirect tax selection, comparison. All of this is like 1-page note, including all the major events in the current, and 1 line, 2 line, 3 line notes is sufficient. So you are covering everything. You are knowing which all areas to hit, and you have some statistics and content as well. Again, growth and development, again general related to inclusive development, concept of growth versus development. Again, here you can have statistics like how India fares with UK per capita GDP, or how poverty, how health, education, poverty, standard of living, malnutrition, like all these, you just need to have content on all the different aspects of inclusive growth or development. And again, you can even add some content from like what is development, like as Amartya Sen noted, development means removal of unfreedoms, choices, social choice theory. Or what did John Rawls say about development, or about justice, how you can connect justice and development. It's like the beauty about some areas in static in GS2 GS3 is that you can beautifully connect some static parts of GS2 to GS3, connect justice, connect constitution, connect articles, connect laws and examples into the static part. So inclusive growth, development, planning, all that are areas where you can add content, specifics and improvise. Again, employment, very important. Unemployment, what are the steps taken, what is the, so again you can look into PIB, or you can look into year-end review of Ministry of Employment, what are the steps taken and what is the status. And you can read 1 or 2 articles on employment from Hindu or Express columns, and where you will get some other alternative views also. Some criticism is also needed, some suggestions are also needed. Here again you can talk about some examples taken by different panchayats or state governments for generating employment. Like during the COVID time, there was a lot of steps being taken to connect like people who are coming back, noting their skill sets and creating job opportunities depending on that. I think West Champaran district, I collected some case study for ethics mostly, but that can be connected to employment as well. That can be connected to inclusive development as well. Like using the same example in multiple areas, but having content. Again, in employment, what are the this thing like female employment, rural employment, urban employment, female versus male employment, vulnerable section employment versus the other, formal employment versus informal employment, sector employment. Then again, employment in general, what are the main things in news? Like sometimes the new schemes will be news, like NGNREGA, PMKY or Sfurti, labor codes. Sometimes labor codes, if it's in news majorly, then that will be more important. Something like if urban poverty, urban unemployment is more in news, that will be more important, but still have some basic idea about all the basic constituents in very small this thing. So now this is land reforms. Land reforms, again, some basic ideas, some basic dimensions. So what are the basic dimensions of land reforms? So one is like land, one is tenancy, one is ceiling, one is efficiency of or the productivity of land, and so you can again have some examples, some content. What is the existing thing? Like what existing thing is like you have record of rights, survey record, and sale deed. Mostly sale deed is there. The actual records is not there. Tenancy reform is not there. In some states you have some tenancy reforms, but most of the states don't have. And again, land reforms earlier used to focus more on land ceiling, land redistribution, and all that. But what is going forward? What more needs to be done? Now, land reforms in cities should be looking at things like changing floor space index (FSI), changing things like TDR, transferable development rights. Like these are all just basic ideas. But again, anything on land reforms, your answer will elevate like anything. If you have the basic dimensions, basic things, what are the steps taken by government? Like land, like Karnataka has done that Bhumi and Kaveri, like land information management system, integrated ILIMS, government has UL PIN, Bhumi Aadhar, land Aadhar, there is the national land record management plan or something. So all of that are the things, steps taken by the government. And then you talk about status, you talk about some steps taken by some industrially developed states like Karnataka, or then what did land reforms earlier focus on, what more needs to be done going forward. Here also you can talk about recommendations of committees or experts, like I think people like Vivek Debroy, experts like Vivek Debroy have spoken about the land reforms that are needed in the future. You can end with that also. You can talk about vacant land tax, you can talk about FSI, TDR, land value tax. Smart cities are using land value tax, like if a new highway comes, the value of the land increases in that area. So some of the smart cities, like I saw a video on smart city, Chennai smart city, they were trying to use how the concept of value addition, like the land value tax, wherein if a new metro or rail comes and where the land value of that area increases, they increase the taxation also from those areas. So the government also benefits, the area also benefits. So things like that. You can talk about a lot of these ideas as well. And things like a single window, curtain principle, sunset principle, mirror principle, title insurance, all of that. Now we'll talk about agri also. So non-agri economy for each area, again talk about what are the different paths, what is the existing status, have some prepared introductions, conclusions, graph, statistics, recommendations, have for, against, arguments with value addition, committee recommendations, some case studies as well, some positive examples from different states, or even comparison between India and the world. Now we'll look at agriculture also quickly and we'll end it. So again, we have 3 to 4 areas. Okay, so agriculture in general, we have things like, one is food processing industries has been separately given. So food processing industry is like relatively safer area. You can just prepare some solid content, like some good introductions. What is the scope? What is the significance? Some areas like in India, some famous locations of food processing industries. Like you have some clusters in Delhi. You have some clusters in some areas. Have some examples. Then upstream and downstream requirements. So this is part of the syllabus. Like what are the upstream? Like let's say, as I said, this is Amul cooperative, and then it goes to Amul chocolate factory. So there the processing happens, and from there the export happens in the ports. So you can connect upstream and downstream and connect the different paths and then make a integrated case study or example. Then what are the steps taken by the government already, like mega food parks, PM Kisan Sampada scheme, Operation Greens, all that, and then Kisan Rail, Agri Rail, all that. Talk about the schemes, have some status on what the existing this thing is, and then talk about going forward what more needs to be done. In that you can talk about how some state is doing better, or some other country is doing better, or things like how we should focus on horticulture more, or like the budget and the articles itself will give you a lot of idea. Like if you read Indian Express, you have experts like Ashok Gulati talking about how on which areas we should focus on in food processing, in agriculture. So you can take some points. Basically, the idea is you should have content on status. You should have idea on what are the existing schemes that are there, what is there, like how well they have performed, and going forward, what more needs to be done. Quoting examples. And then economics of animal rearing, again static, but you have different parts, like you have poultry, dairy, and some different parts. The only point is, like, so far animal rearing has not been asked separately, so a general understanding is decent. But to be on the safer side, have some content on each part of animal rearing, dairy, poultry, each part, and what steps have been taken, some case studies, like Hiware Bazaar as a case study, like where this they transitioned from water heavy, water intense rice and sugar to dairy and other non-water intensive things. So showing the importance of animal rearing. Or and again here also, what are the steps taken by government, what are the things in news, and talk about what more needs to be done. Static, like as I said, so food processing industry is part of, you can consider as part of the static, because mostly question will be asked from in general about food processing or how well it has performed. So you can prepare it. Again, animal rearing also, it's again prepare, like you can pre-prepare it. Technology missions and agri, you just need some examples, statistics. So these are things like AgMarkNet, ECO, eChoupal by ITC. It can be by government and by private sector, by different states, by center. And positives and negatives. What are the hits? What are the misses? Like AgriStack, eSagu by Telangana, AgriNet by Tamil Nadu, GeoKrishi by this thing, ISRO Bhuvan. These are all like just value addition content. In general, the question would be how well it has performed. So if you look into some PIB article, you will get how well it has performed. If you alternatively take a argument, like column from Express or Hindu, you will get some contrary opinion as well, and quote these examples in the body. And while going forward, you quote the agri committees. Like you have Ashok Dalwai committee. Ashok Dalwai committee talks about, gives recommendations about the entire spectrum of agricultural activities. So you can take some solid recommendations. You open the PDF, you will have 500-page PDF, but you can just look at the recommendations, 1 page, 2 page, or the subheadings, or the first line of each recommendation. Just collect 3-4 good recommendations for each area, each part of the agriculture supply chain process. Major crops, cropping pattern, again in terms of maps, in terms of spatial distribution, in terms of subsidies, in terms of the changing demand. Like one is in terms of supply, what are the existing patterns, one is in terms of how demand is changing, in terms of how government schemes focus is changing. Types of irrigation systems, again different types. These are like things which can be used in multiple areas as well, like how something like in summer you're growing cotton, in winter you're growing wheat, you are growing distribution, how you are talking about the strip cropping or something like intercropping. These are like example solutions. These are like some simple value addition, not very major out of the box things, but it improves the value addition, it improves the presentation a lot. Types of irrigation as well, you should have some content on what are the different types of irrigation available, which are the areas which India is lagging, be it canal, be it this thing, what are the steps taken by government, state governments and central government, and going forward what more needs to be done. Again, Ashok Dalwai committee or a news article expert, Ashok Dalwai or any expert, or even Niti Aayog report or something, or you can quote on your own, just divide it into different parts, like in terms of demand, like Mihir Shah committee noted how we have to reduce the demand, or like in terms of demand, in terms of supply, in terms of changing the cropping pattern, in terms of each part of the supply chain. You can divide it and write accordingly. Water storage, agri storage, like again different types, have some content, some value addition. Solutions, transportation. Now again in agriculture, each part you should have 1 or 2 page separate notes. Like transportation of agri produce will be generally neglected, but you should have a separate 2 page note. Like what are the different things, schemes in use, like transport TMA scheme, Krishi Udan. What are the different types of transportation used, majorly used now? What more can be done? Examples like cold storage facility, reefer parks in Varanasi, or reefer parks at airports, something like that. What are the existing things being done by Airport Authority of India? Everything can be taken from one PIB article or something like one newspaper article or one thing, but you should have content on what is the status now in terms of agri transportation, what are the steps taken, what more needs to be done. And this is like status and ENAM. I try to connect the different things in use, like ENAM and E-Kushal or E-Kisan Rath or something like that. So transportation and the structure. ENAM gives you the whole structure for selling from state to state. Kushal or Kisan Rath or all that gives you the transportation thing. So you connect, although questions are asked about transportation, you can connect the marketing, transportation and the different this thing. Marketing, again, what are what is the status, what are the steps taken, what does Niti Aayog say? Like it says reform the APMCs, it talks about ENAM, getting all states on board in ENAM. It talks about solving entry barriers. It talks about price discovery, like you should focus on price discovery, not just on. So what are the solutions proposed by Niti Aayog? Mostly they have not been done because agriculture, again, states have to be on board, so it will not be very easy. Then we have the Model APMC Act. So as I said, any age area, you should also look at what are the bodies involved, what are the major acts involved, what is the status, what more needs to be done. So mainly agri marketing is APMC led. Then you have steps like the MSP, FRP, One Nation, One Fertilizer schemes and all that. Then you have futures also, but it has not been like developed much. Agri futures market has not been developed to that a good level. Like we have the National Commodity Derivative Exchange, we have the Multi Commodities Exchange, MCX, NCDEX. So futures market will also help us in solving the price discovery issue. Like futures market helps in solving the issue of fair price discovery. Otherwise, we are only talking about the physical transportation from the different ration shops, solving using MSP, but we need futures markets as well. Then alternatively, we have the ENAM for marketing, the connecting different states on board. We have the transportation E-Kushal. So that's solving, we are getting all states on board and then using E-Kushal for transporting the different agri-produce. Then we have farm laws which spoke about marketing, private mandis and all that. Then we have the Essential Commodities Act, like all the other acts. And then some state specific, like the Karnataka participation in NC, like Karnataka has a special purpose vehicle specifically for agri marketing, or Karnataka has taken some steps for improving the APMCs, state APMCs. So examples. So essentially the point is, again, it all boils down to what is the status, what are the advantages, what are the steps taken, positive examples, statistics, what more needs to be done, steps already taken, what more needs to be done. In all that, you should have solid value addition, examples and all that. E-Tech, again, similarly E-Tech in this thing, general, we spoke about Kisan, like ENAM, E-Kushal, drones, Agri Stack. It's all the similar structure, having whatever is important in news that year, you can add onto the existing notes. So that is basically about GS3 as well. Any particular questions, doubts, one or two? ज़्यादा? हाँ 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 प्रीलिम्स के हिसाब से मतलब प्रीलिम्स में ज़्यादा जो भी उस लाइक इन दैट ईयर वट एवर वाज इन न्यूज़ मेजरली, तो उस हिसाब से पढ़ना चाहिए. पर मेंस के हिसाब से मतलब जो भी सिलेबस में सेपरेटली लिखा है और जो भी मतलब करंट भी इंपॉर्टेंट है, लेकिन प्रीलिम्स के लिए करंट में जो भी हुआ है वो सब हो मतलब पूछ सकता है, लेकिन मेंस में जो भी मोस्टली मेजरली इंपॉर्टेंट है, मोर इंपॉर्टेंट, मोर रेलेवेंट, वही पूछेगा. प्रीलिम्स में छोटा छोटा फैक्ट्स भी पूछ सकता है. तो प्रीलिम्स मतलब फिर भी हमारा प्रिपरेशन तो थोड़ा सिंप्लीफाई करना चाहिए. मतलब प्रीलिम्स के लिए सिंपली एक सोर्स, एक करंट का कंपाइलेशन, एक इंस्टीट्यूट सोर्स या एक न्यूज़पेपर और एक सॉलिड बुक, इतना ही पढ़ना चाहिए. और उसमें से जो भी इंफॉर्मेशन है वो यूज करके एलिमिनेट करना चाहिए. मतलब हाइपोथेटिकली एनीथिंग अंडर द सन फॉर एग्रीकल्चर कैन बी आस्क्ड फॉर एग्रीकल्चर, बट रियलिस्टिकली वो हम नहीं कर सकते. तो जो भी सब कर रहे हैं, मतलब एक न्यूज़पेपर, एक कंपाइलेशन, एक सॉलिड बुक, लाइक जो भी सब्जेक्ट के लिए जो भी इंपॉर्टेंट है उतना करना चाहिए और करंट में स्ट्रांग होके एलिमिनेट करना चाहिए, मतलब जो भी ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है, जो भी लाइक वट एवर इज मोर रिलेवेंट, मोर इम्पॉर्टेंट, मोर प्रोबेबल, इन दैट वे. मेंस इज लाइक प्रिडिक्टेबल. मेंस के एडवांटेज ये है कि एंटायरली प्रिडिक्टेबल है. नियरली 70-80% ऑफ द क्वेश्चंस डायरेक्टली कम्स फ्रॉम द सिलेबस और प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चंस, एंड सम क्वेश्चंस कम फ्रॉम द करंट. अगेन करंट में इफ यू टेक लाइक 10-15 questions most important from that year, it will be from that only. So mains, I mean prelims, a little bit of more width in terms of the coverage is needed, but mains a little bit of depth and whatever is there in syllabus, in previous year questions, in current majorly उतना ही है. लाइक कमिटी रिकमेंडेशन टॉपर नोट्स में मिलेगा, मेरा नोट्स भी मैं शेयर करता हूँ, तो उनमें से कमिटी रिकमेंडेशन गूगल करके 2-3 स्पेसिफिक रिकमेंडेशंस लिख के मतलब कंपाइल करना चाहिए. और वो एरिया के लिए मतलब जनरली वो एरिया के बारे में पूछता है, तो कंक्लूजन में रिकमेंडेशंस ये कमिटी ने ये रिकमेंड किया, तो गोइंग फॉरवर्ड ये करना चाहिए, मतलब ऐसे लिख सकते हैं. लाइक फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन, कमिटी ऑन फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन recommended this, you can talk about that. The thing is like otherwise if you don't have committee recommendations, it's okay, you can talk about some expert views or some expert solutions from some article. The committee recommendation mandatory nahi hai, necessary nahi hai, but it gives a little bit of value addition. Areas in syllabus you have 20 for GS1 GS2 GS3, मतलब हर सेपरेट एरिया के लिए 1-2 पेज का नोट बना चाहिए, और उसमें एक कमिटी रिकमेंडेशन, 1 या 2 कमिटी रिकमेंडेशंस, few examples, diagrams separately, as I said, statistics, quotes, reports, laws, examples, diagrams prepare करना चाहिए. Okay, so we'll stop it here.